I want to tell you about this book that I just read, The Power of One. You will not find it on Goodreads. It does not have a barcode. I bought it when I was in Israel. Back in July of 2022, I visited Israel with a bunch of other social studies teachers. We were Fulbright scholars who got the opportunity to travel to Israel to learn about their history and culture. They funded our trip. We were able to travel to Haifa and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and we spent a week also in the Negev on a kibbutz. Because we were studying culture and history, we had an itinerary that had lots of learning opportunities, and we traveled to a lot of different places to learn about the culture. One of the weeks we were in the Negev desert, and we were staying in a kibbutz. This man named Naftali Aklum came to speak to us about his older brother. This is his older brother. So there is a group of Ethiopian Jews that now live in Israel that did not live in Israel in the 70s and 80s. So you might be thinking it's very unusual to have a group of Jews come from a country in Eastern Africa, Ethiopia. So here is the story. I want to preface that I am doing this to educate. I'm a teacher, but I am not an expert on Judaism or on Ethiopian Jews. This is just something that I'm really interested in, and I learned a lot by reading this book, and I wanted to share it with you. Context. If you are familiar with the Bible, you've probably heard of King Solomon. The story is King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba married, had children. The Queen of Sheba is from Aksum, which is the ancient name of what is now the country of Ethiopia. So they brought Judaism to Ethiopia. So that's why there are Jews in Ethiopia. Another theory is that Jews came to Ethiopia. Judaism came to Ethiopia because of the tribe of Dan. The tribe of Dan migrated down to that area, and that is where the Jews in Ethiopia came from, that they are descendants of the tribe of Dan. So fast forward to the 1900s, we have World War I, World War II, and then the establishment of the State of Israel. In the 1900s, Jews want to return to their biblical homeland of Israel. Palestine is the name of the country in the early 1900s. The country is Palestine, and it is inhabited by Palestinians. So without getting too deeply into the weeds of the politics behind this decision, in the Balfour Declaration, the British established Palestine as a national home for Jewish people, and that was following World War I. And then following World War II, and if you think of the context, this is after the Holocaust, where Jewish people were targeted and murdered in concentration camps by Nazis. In 1948, the State of Israel is established as a home for Jewish people. So there are different ethnic groups of Jews. There are Sephardic Jews who come from Spain and Portugal, from the Iberian Peninsula. If you are an Ashkenazi Jew, that means you are from Central or Eastern Europe, and most Jews today are of Ashkenazi descent. In 1950, 2 years after the State of Israel, the country of Israel, was established, the law of return was put in place. The law of return said that all Jews had the right to immigrate to their homeland of Israel and to have Israeli citizenship, to gain Israeli citizenship. The Zionist movement was a movement where Jewish people wanted a homeland. They wanted a place where they could settle. Different Zionists had different beliefs on where that should be. Some believed it should be in Israel. Others believed that it shouldn't be in Israel. But most Zionists wanted the biblical land of Israel back from biblical times, from Bible times. You'll also need to know the term Aliyah, which means journey of scattered Jews back to their homeland of Israel. So the community in Ethiopia, the community of Jews, came to be known as Beta Israel, or House of Israel, because in the 4th century, the country of Ethiopia, the area of Ethiopia, Aksum, established Christianity as their main religion. Christianity, Judaism are different religions. So to distinguish the Jews from the Christians, Beta Israel became the Jewish community in Ethiopia. The right of return, the law of return, gave rights to Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews to go to Israel, to immigrate to Israel, and become citizens. It did not initially recognize Ethiopian Jews as part of that. They did not have the right to return. It wasn't until 1975 that Ethiopian Jews were recognized for the right of return. And Menachem Begin, when he became prime minister of Israel, he told Mossad, bring the Ethiopian Jews to Israel. Get me the Ethiopian Jews. Bring them here. So what's going on in Ethiopia at the time? Well, before the 70s, there was a lot of persecution. There was a lot of religious persecution. Jews were a minority in Ethiopia. Also, Ethiopian Jews, they thought that they were the only Jews. They thought they were the only tribe that had survived. When Christianity becomes the main religion of Aksum, which is modern-day Ethiopia, the Jews in Ethiopia were persecuted. Now, when Israel became an official state and an official place for the Jews, they were not allowed to leave Ethiopia by the leader of Ethiopia. And the prime minister of Israel, the leader of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, didn't want to upset world politicians, world leaders. He didn't want to upset Ethiopia, so he did not insist that Ethiopian Jews be allowed to go to Israel. So the Ethiopian Jews are stuck in Ethiopia in a violent and hostile environment. So in 1975, the emperor is overthrown by a group called the Derg. In the 50s and 60s, Ethiopia was fairly unstable in terms of their government. They had an emperor, and the emperor was eventually overthrown in the 70s by a group called the Derg, who are pro-Soviet. Now, without getting into the Cold War politics, the Soviet Union, Russia, the former Soviet Union, they were socialist. So in Ethiopia, a group called the Derg, who were supported by the Soviets, overthrew the government. A man named Mengistu Haile Mariam took power in 1977. He took power of Ethiopia, and he was not tolerant to Jews, or he was not tolerant to any religion. All minority religions were banned, and Mengistu established what he called the Red Terror. Basically, anyone who opposed him would be killed. And the Jews were not allowed to migrate to Israel. Now, in 1975, when Israel established the right of return does apply to Ethiopian Jews. So they're allowed to come home, but just because Israel allows them to come home does not mean Mengistu, the leader of Ethiopia, will let them go. Enter Feredi Aklum. So Feredi Aklum was a teacher. He was born to a wealthy family in Ethiopia. He was an Ethiopian Jew. He was a teacher who also advocated for the Zionist movement of returning to Israel. Because of his activities, he was wanted by the government and he fled to Sudan. This is next door to Ethiopia. It is to the west of Ethiopia. And from there, he did not have a lot of resources. He was alone and didn't have money. He sold his wedding ring to be able to afford supplies to write telegrams. And he sent out telegrams hoping someone would help him get to Israel. Danny Lamore came and met Feredi in Sudan. And he said, if you can make it to Sudan and then to Israel, can other Ethiopian Jews follow the same path? So Danny and Feredi teamed up. And what they did is they were able to get plane tickets for those Jews who had walked from Ethiopia, been put in refugee camps, hidden the fact that they were Jews. Feredi and Danny were able to get them plane tickets to Europe, and from Europe they were able to go to Israel. So in that time period, Feredi and Danny were able to help 800 to 900 Ethiopian Jews get to Israel. So there are other operations to get Ethiopian Jews from Ethiopia to Israel. One of them, Operation Moses. So this was an agreement, a secret agreement, with the president of Sudan. So Ethiopians would have to get to Sudan. And the president of Sudan let the Jews fly from Sudan to Belgium and then from Belgium to Israel in exchange for large sums of money. So the Sudanese president was getting a lot of money for letting the Jews fly to Belgium and then to Israel. But then he was found out and the operation stopped. This lasted from November 1984 to January 1984. So a couple months. There was also the Red Sea Diving Club, which was a diving club in Sudan that was established to sneak Jews from the Red Sea. The Red Sea actually connects Sudan, Ethiopia, and Israel, to sneak Jews to Israel. So the Red Sea Diving Club was pretending to be a tourist attraction, but really was operated by Mossad agents. Then there was Operation Solomon in 1991, Operation Solomon was a 36-hour airlift. Operation Solomon and Operation Joshua were both airlifts. Operation Solomon was airlifting Ethiopian Jews from Addis Ababa, which is a city in Ethiopia, so directly from Ethiopia to Israel. In May of 1991, they were able to transport 14,000 Ethiopian Jews. So in total, we have over 20,000 Ethiopian Jews that were helped in the 70s, 80s, and 90s to migrate to Israel. And that is the story involving Feredi Aklum. Crazy, right? These are the things they say you don't learn in school. And now you're learning. You're learning now. And that's what matters. That's what matters.